more of an impression of where I'm going to go. And a straight line is always a good idea to put down if you're going to do something that's even on both sides. It gives you a chance to judge it better. And this beautiful old decanter, I've had it for years. I found it in an old trunk in our basement when I was just a kid, and I've had it all this time. And then this little one over here, I try to make them not, have a nice variety of sizes. Always try for variety in your compositions. We're more charmed by variety than monotony. And this is going to be here, and then I'm going to have these grapes showing through. Just anchor points, but you can see how beneficial it has been to prepare the canvas a little bit. Now I should not have that show too much, because I have to try to make this glass look like glass by just putting in some strategic lights, highlights that hit on the apex of concave and convex planes. And why don't I start right from this, do this first one, the one that I've had so long. The lighting sometimes is so dramatic that the more important highlights are obscured. So you have to look into it and find the ones that you think are extremely important. Well, I think I need one at the top. Painting is always deciding what you need and what you want, not what's there. Sometimes what's there isn't as essential as what you feel would be more descriptive. This stopper is, it has sections. I don't know whether it's octagonal or sectagonal or what, but anyway, I know it. I've cleaned it enough times, and so knowing it helps me get a vision or know what's important to put down to record it. Can't rely on just an innocent sight alone. I'm just putting in little gray. I've used black and white and burnt umber to put in the slight little places where the light is hitting it. The stopper is glass within glass, and so I should show that. Make your renditions sensible. And we can make it sensible if we talk about our subject. I never do a painting of anything without handling it. Well, I do avoid that doing a portrait. Because it familiarizes me with what it's all about. I don't know whether you can see how very fragilely I've started, because once you make it thick, and once you make it obvious, it doesn't have this delicate quality. So being a little very, very cautious in the beginning is the key to painting glass. Because if you make, let's say, if I had this put in like this, mean, it wouldn't look delicate. So if you do get it to paint it in with too much vigor, the best thing to do is to wipe it out and start again. Put it in with more tender, loving care. Which reminds me of that story. Well, I'm too busy to tell you a story. I love to tell stories. When I used to teach, people would say, don't ask Helen to show you something, because instead of showing you, she's going to tell you a story. You're going to have to listen to one of her stories that talks about a principle rather than have her just show you how to do it. Well, yes, of course. Just showing a person how to do it at that time isn't as helpful as some of my stories. Oh. Rather than just say that you have to look for the lights, I say, only put the highlights on the apex of the concave and convex planes. Put it on bigger than you want it, and then cut it down. In fact, most painting is that. Don't try to get the effect in one stroke. Put it down to see if it's all right, and then fix it. Ease it in. Roscoe used to say, Helen, make it, break it, and make it again. I thought, what is he talking about? Well, he was talking about this. Put the highlight on with make it, put it down, then break it, ease it in, do something about it. Maybe adjust it. And maybe that process takes, here, why don't I take one of my poopsie-doo brushes? Maybe that takes it away a little bit too much. So that's, I made it, I broke it, and now I'm going to make it again to really make it shine. Well, one of those highlights, one of those important highlights hits right at the neck. That's a little concave. So we put one on there. To show you how so many people try to put a little highlight on, they take one of these tiny little round brushes and put it on. But see, what happens is that the amount of paint dissipates too much. It's much better to take a brush that has more stamina, that you can load the brush and put it on bigger than it is and cut it down. Putting a highlight on in this fashion stops the highlights from looking like a chicken with a highlight foot walked across the picture. It looks like little white dots. Roscoe had a maid, Bessie, and he always said, Bessie, will you come in and see my picture before he'd deliver it? And Bessie one time said, Mr. Roscoe, what's that spot on the end of her nose? And when she went back in the kitchen, Roscoe fixed the highlight. It didn't really look like a highlight, it just looked like a spot to Bessie. So don't be afraid of somebody's comments. They can be very helpful. They're hard to take. Now, see, I would not like to let this little decanter come at the same height. A little lower would be nicer. What color am I using? Off-white, or white that is just not pure. It's got a little bit of, well, whatever. Burnt umber in it, or maybe red. Anything. Just, or it could be blue. In this case, maybe blue would have been better because I have this brownish background. If when I put it on it looked all right, I'll use it. That's the whole key to making the color the right color. Judging it. You have to look at it. You have to put it down and say, I like it. It looks fine. Or put it down and say, ooh, I don't like it. I had someone study with me a long time ago, and he'd always come over and he'd say, Helen, is this mixture all right? And I said, well, I don't know. Why don't you try it out? He said, no, I want to know. I said, well, it looks all right. Let me feel it tonight. I said, okay. Then he'd come over again and say, excuse me, is this color okay? Is it too bright or too dull? I said, well, why don't you try it out? Because it's got to meet the colors that's on your canvas. Well, I have to know. I said, well, why don't you add a little bit more gray into it? Anything to get rid of them. And so this went on constantly. Then I thought, why does he approach painting this way? And I thought, he's a doctor. He had to learn it and then practice it. And painting is just the backwards. You practice it and learn from it. So finding out that this was his way of approaching a thing and so different than my way of approaching it made me still not like him any better. So don't ever be afraid, because you can always say, oops, I don't like it, and take it out. Because no one knows. No one knows what you've gone through to get it to look so wonderful. It might be just a record of a lot of corrections. Now this is not a highlight. This is kind of just a haze that's happening. Because of the light. And let me put a highlight on this dent and this bump. They look like they could use a little bit of adjusting. Now I've picked out the highlights that I think are the most important ones. There's lots more highlights, but I always say one highlight per customer. You see, this is one shape, it gets one highlight. Here's a shape, it gets one highlight. Here's a shape, it gets a highlight exposed here and here. I maybe should put the highlight that I see in the back. I didn't put that stopper, and I hate that stopper. It's a funny shape. And so, now, reflections from these highlights they're not reflections actually, transparent glass. The light can hit and go through. Oh, I missed one. There's one here. The light can go through the transparent glass and come out over here. I think to get away with this caper, painting is a caper. It's a trickery. You're trying to make this paint become that. And it can never do that. It can only ever be paint that looks like that. So I never make the reflection or the light through the glass the same color as the highlight. That makes sure that this is on the front and then this one's in the back. So I make that one kind of a yellow. I'll make it even yellower to differentiate. And that one shows through too. Just for fun, I think I'll make it blue. It's my picture. See how it works. Oh, I like that. Make it even bluer. Looks more crystal clear. Liked it so much on that, I think I'll put on this one. No, I've got to get that. I've got to do something else. I'm going to do it to this one too, because it would be consistent being both transparent glass in the same lighting conditions. Where's that brush that can maybe just mangle that a little? I think it's time for me to step back and see what evil lurks. I did mangle that highlight. Put that on bigger. Yeah, let me see what's happened here. So I've actually taught the most important part of painting transparent glass. I've taught the highlights, but now I have to paint the surrounding areas. Transparent glass, well, I have to paint in what's behind it, and that is those grapes behind that, and then this decanter and the red wine in the glass. There's that ellipse again. Can't get away from painting an ellipse, being a still life painter. And there's some liquid in this one too. And think in terms of planes. The liquid has a flat plane, that's the elliptical shape, and then the down plane. And of course, every plane has its own tone. So now these highlights don't jump out as diagrams, because they're being, I'm adding the colorful situation that they're in. I'm going to park these grapes down on the table with a cast shadow, just so you can get the overall effect of this picture. And, there's so many things to think about. Not really. There's one thing to think about, and then everything has to fall into place with it. And that is that you have your mind on a focal point, right in here. So I'm going to lighten these grapes here. Don't let anything distract you from making a successful pictorial presentation. And to do so is always a matter of a focal point. the reflections. More reflections. Coming from the surrounding areas. Oops. Painting is saying a lot of oops. I used to say something else. Try to leave paint the important first. Leave the trifles for last. The important thing, or focus on the important. Don't junk it up. I see so many factors or things about this glass, but I'm focusing on the reflection and the highlight on this concave and this convex, because I need them and want them. No one's going to admire you more for painting every little thing and then ending up with an unsuccessful picture. Let me step back a minute. Surely my brief visits with you don't enable me to paint something as ambitious as this. But you can see that I did it with the same reliable principle that I've been talking about in painting this picture. Notice the highlight. In fact, this is the same little decanter. Here's another highlight. There's a highlight passing through, hitting here. Here's a highlight. And so I know you want to watch me do all these things, but watching isn't as important as having me tell you how important something is. And that is that you have to focus on the highlights to make glass crystal clear. So I know what you would like to see me do, but I'm the teacher, and I feel as though I know what's best for you. I know it's best for you to just learn one thing at a time. And today's lesson has been on how important the highlight is that hits the concave and convex plane of the shapes of these decanters. Yes, there's a little convex plane on these grapes too. They're round and they catch a highlight. And I always like to try to work the background toward the end of the picture's development to try to make the background serve its purpose, to show off the subject, not distract from it. And so maybe even a little lighter tone here on the table would help. Oh my, here I am at the end of my lesson again. Time for me to say goodbye and say, next time I'll teach you how to make soup.
Welcome to My Studio is made possible in part by Northlight Books, award-winning publisher of step-by-step how-to fine art and craft books, including instruction in watercolor, oil painting, drawing, graphic design, this are flowers, landscapes, portraits, and still life.